The hypothetical was if you could stop it with a wall. I'm not an expert on the efficacy of what this wall would look like or border security, but so that's why we're using a hypothetical. If it could, would you build it? And you said you still wouldn't build it, even if you knew it would solve the problem. And I'm fascinated to explore that idea and just try and understand it a bit more.
No.
This is a really good one. This is interesting. I didn't expect that answer, I'll be honest.
Would you... Alright, so... Would you think it would solve all of your problems if you built a wall around your property here? So you're keeping everybody away, okay? And you're happy, and it's not about anybody else.
Yeah, I can answer that. Yeah.
Not about the greater good, collaboration, communication, whatever, diversity. I just want to be safe here.
Yeah.
Would you feel fulfilled?
If there was a cartel surrounding my house, actively trying to break into my house, I would feel more secure with a wall around my house. Yeah. And I don't know if it's a matter of fulfillment as much as efficacy and security. It's not as much a philosophical, subjective thing. But yeah, in that scenario, I would. Yeah.
So...
Would you not?
Would any country be able to do that? Just live like little enclaves?
I'm sorry, what do you mean?
If every other country in the world would follow that example of just building a wall, because we want to keep those guys away.
That's
a good question. Oh, we're going to build a wall. We're all going to build walls.
That's a valid point.
Now we're going to live in our own...
Every border...
It sounds to me like a dystopian future, right?
Every border doesn't have the same amount of activity either, though.
Yeah,
so
but the general consensus...
The Canadian border, I'm not an expert on this, but I don't think the amount of human trafficking fentanyl coming across the Canadian border is the same as the Mexican-U.S. border.
That's a question on poverty and...
Well, the point is that the issue exists, and we're trying to figure out how to best solve the problem.
Right.
You can talk about the motivating reasons why the problem exists.
Do you think building a wall is the solution, or are there other solutions?
So can you articulate a better solution?
I'm not in the position to articulate a better solution. That's why we don't elect people who want to build a wall. Because we realize that there might be better solutions than building a wall.
But the fascinating thing I can't get over is the fact that even if you knew the wall would solve the problem, you still wouldn't build it because
it's a world that I don't want to live in, that is enclosed between walls.
So you'd rather live in a world where there are drugs coming across the border and human trafficking, people dying in the process.
I'd rather live in a world where we are trying to find solutions that are not restrictive. Like the best possible solution.
Yeah, me too. I'm trying to find the best possible solution. I'm presenting you what I shouldn't say what I think it's, but in this thought experiment, this would be a solution. This would be
a solution.
Can you provide an alternative though? I'm presenting you a solution that will solve the problem. You're choosing not to take it, and you don't even have an alternative solution besides the larger pursuit of another solution. And that's just fascinating.
I'm not in the position to formulate a solution on this because I am not in the position where I can...
But you are declining the solutions.
Yeah, because present me a different solution to the drug trafficking.
Why do I have to present you a different solution if there is
Do you have a solution?
In this thought experiment, there's a solution.
Outside of this thought experiment.
But
I don't agree with this thought experiment,
so
not because of the drug trafficking.
If we take it outside the thought experiment, then it's become a political conversation that we can do that, but this is fascinating. This is really interesting. This is a really good one. This is interesting. I didn't expect that answer, I'll be honest.
What answer?
That you wouldn't build, if you could solve a problem, you still wouldn't do it because there's other ramifications and you're taking into account other things, and that's fascinating.
Doesn't it make sense though?
I'll be honest, no.
No, but do we want to divide the world even more?
I understand that. I understand what your point is.
That's I guess my main point. Do we want to?
Ideally, it would be
borders?
great to live in a world where we don't need where we don't even need guns. That would be great. But unfortunately, that's just not reality.
There are many places in the world where we don't need guns or borders.
Where?
Take Europe, for example.
Can you be more specific? Because there's people with guns in Europe.
Do you want to get specific on numbers compared to the U.S.? Because that's a very, very, very...
Well, when you make a statement that I'm fascinated by that. There's places in the world that they're so peaceful they don't need guns at all in those countries. But what countries are those?
Take the Nordic countries in Europe.
They don't have guns.
Most countries in Europe.
There's no criminals with guns.
Hmm?
Do they have police there?
Yeah.
Do the police carry guns?
Yeah.
They have guns.
I mean, I'm talking about civilians.
Okay,
Just
that's
people.
different. This is good though.
I don't understand.
That's
So
interesting.
No,
Wow, I'm trying to.
I was
That's
raised
fascinating.
in a country where nobody would, unless you're like hunting.
I'm still just stuck on the wall thing. That's fascinating.
What?
That you wouldn't solve if you knew it would stop the flow of the most deadly drug we have ever seen and human trafficking, which causes people to be raped in the process, children be trafficked. But the only thing you would have to do is actually to execute the building of a big wall. You would still choose all of those things
It's a bad
rather
example.
than building that wall.
It's a bad, for instance.
Yeah.
It's like me saying,
How's it?
if you were to put 10,000 people in, hold them hostage for the entirety of their lives, and it will solve all the conflicts in the world, would you do it?
I don't know if that's because
it's the same kind of like.
But the-
okay, it stops.
it's not too far off because the whole argument, the idea, the purpose behind that wall is to accomplish the goal of the thought experiment. So it's not as far off because the whole argument for doing that is to solve the very problem presented in the thought experiment. So I don't know about holding 10,000 people hostages. Can you come up with another one that?
Yeah, so I think it's the same.
You would have to kind of take a real problem and be like, if this could solve that problem, there's an argument that it can, but let's just say it can, because then you have all the political debate around, oh, it can't for this reason. It's interesting to see when someone would actually carry through on something like that. Simply like going back to that initial one at the beginning of, if you knew it would stop a war, would you vote for Trump? A lot of people still say no, and I've tried this, and it's fascinating, and I can't come to terms with it, and I'm trying to ask questions to figure out why this is happening.
Because you're thinking in solely those terms. You're thinking, if A, then B.
For a thought experiment, yeah. I know, and I'm acknowledging that that's not
you're
reality.
Acknowledging that like there's so much complexity to a statement like that.
Yeah,
you say-
it's not. I understand. Yeah,
So it's to me that is like not a.
but it still allows us to follow through the thought, the logic. Like I'm still saying, wow, you would still choose not to do it, even though it's why, and then you articulate your reasoning, and then we can follow that reasoning.
Yeah, but I don't think my initial evaluation of your statement is the same as your initial evaluation. You're
Like-
saying, if this happens, then this stops
If
happening,
you,
right?
if you knew, I've made it as clear as I can. If you knew that it would stop, we could stop all those problems. All you do need to do is execute this blueprint to build this thing. You're declining to execute the blueprint because you don't want to live in a world with walls or something. And I find that fascinating.
Because I'm thinking about the greater implications of that.
Okay.
Not only that one particular instance that you're talking about.
Okay.
And it might be, you should ask your mom about that too.
Okay.
Because if you're thinking about a thought experiment as having two variables,
Mm-hmm.
if this, then that, but in any sort of like if statement,
Mm-hmm.
there can also be else. Right? It's like
Yeah.
like in
Yeah.
in computer code, right?
I've
If
listened.
this happens, then this happens.
Yeah.
If not, then something else happens, and then else this, else that, else that, else, until you exhaust
Yeah.
and to exhaust all of the else statements is impossible.
And I'm trying to listen to what those things are and weigh them logically, and I still don't think that outweighs the stop of fentanyl and human trafficking and of children. I still think that outweighs the larger implications as far as you've articulated so far. You still have to be able to weigh the two. I understand what you're saying about the implications on the long term. Even taking into account the implications on the long term, I have to use my best judgment in that thought experiment.
Right, but I'm saying that you're stopping that from happening here. You're stopping suffering. Let's say.
Let's not stop it. Carry it through.
In your thought experiment, you're stopping suffering coming over from the border to here.
Okay.
But you're just using this case. What happens if you want to stop suffering in the other borders around the world? From the cartels that can, you're safe in the US, there's no more fentanyl, there's no more human trafficking, you're good.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
What are you going to do? Go build walls in South America? Because now the drugs are making their way
So
there.
we're still in this thought experiment? Okay,
Right.
so
What are you going to do? You're going to stop ships going across the Atlantic? So
If
you
there
can
were-
stop drug trafficking across the Atlantic?
if you gave me a case of a border where there are active cartels trafficking children across, I would be like, it worked there. I think we should maybe look at it.
So where do you stop?
When there's no more trafficking of children across specific borders.
Okay. So you're just going to build wall after wall after wall after wall?
If there's children being trafficked.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel comfortable saying that.
But you thought about it for a second, if you feel comfortable saying that.
I'm always trying to be thoughtful about what I
Right.
say. Yeah.
Because that to me sounds a little much. Right?
In what way?
To divide until when?
Well, I mean, that's essentially
No, I'm
What
just continuing your thought
borders
experiment.
are.
So if you're saying if the wall worked, okay, this is the solution, we're gonna build it
Yeah.
everywhere.
I'm not saying everywhere. If there's a specific point where there's a country and there are active cartels thriving in that point, and there's this hotspot, there's this point in the border with a specific country. It's not like every border in the world, but if there is this case like that, there's a problem and it should be addressed. And if that's the best solution, and there's no better alternative, that is a logical course of action. If you're following objective thinking, yeah.
So instead of doing that, wouldn't a better solution be to try to eradicate the cartels?
That's interesting. So now we're expanding the conversation.
No, I'm not expanding.
I would-
I'm expanding on like your previous from like before where you said present me with another solution.
Okay.
Are they doing this?
So this is in our thought. Are
Hmm?
Are the cartels doing this?
What?
Or you're asking me if the cartels are trafficking across the border?
No. I'm asking, isn't law enforcement actively involved in stopping these cartels and
The Mexican law enforcement?
the Mexican, the U.S. I mean, you know.
The Border Patrol is doing their best. So now we're entering the realm of real life. Oh, wait, stepping out of the thought experiment. This is my observation.
So in the thought experiment, rather than building the wall, wouldn't it be better if you eradicate the cartels?
In the thought experiment. Let's go into real life for a moment, because you're actually. I think we're jumping back and forth a bit.
Okay.
Well, we can carry through the thought experiment. Okay, but if you're doing the thought experiment, you have to lay out the case very clearly. This will solve this. Okay. Do we have, in your thought experiment, do we have the capacity to eradicate the cartels in one fell swoop, all of a sudden? Because we're echoing the real world, and in the real world, this is a very because you have the Mexican police, which are often corrupted by the cartels. You have cartels that are running entire cities. You have cartels influencing the very government of the country that they're in. You have the U.S. officials trying to do their best on the border, and they're exhausted, and it's not working. They can't stop it. The cartels are winning. So now you say eradicate the cartels. So we send in, Navy SEALs, which you could make an argument that would be a good. There are people in the military who do think that we should classify cartels as a terrorist organization, which would then allow us to take such actions. Because right now they're not classified as that. If we did, that would give us jurisdiction to send in special forces in the same way we did in Afghanistan to take out Osama bin Laden. You could make that argument. There would be some logic behind that. I think that this echoes back, though, is that the simplest solution, if you, again, to that thought experiment, if you know that executing this thing and building this device will stop the problem, you're still refusing to do it, you're now asking me, if I could eradicate the cartels, would I do it? Yes, I would.